morning, everyone.
Good morning, Father.
Just as we begin the homily, I want the guys in the tech booth to know I cannot connect with the slides. Let me try now. Done. Thank you. I know that we have some people here today for the very first time, our priests, and I hope this is going to be a test of their endurance. They get hardly any sleep last night, and they're going to be trying very hard not to fall asleep during my homily, so. But I know we have some visitors and guests, and I don't want you to identify yourselves, but I just want to say to you who are here for the first time, congratulations. What a weekend to pick to come to our parish for the first time, because this weekend we begin our annual preaching series on the topic of money. So what can I say? You lucked out. If you're here, you just happen to be here for this annual series. For the next 3 weeks, we're going to be talking about giving, about following Jesus and the mission of the church and how all these things connect. But if you're here today as a visitor, this homily is not for you. You're our guest. So this homily is for all who identify themselves as being members of Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish. Now, I have to say that this is a topic that is always a bit of a challenge, you know, to go into. And I especially feel it, like if you're here for the first time, you come to church. We had a young man at the last Mass, had never been to church in his whole life. And he comes to church, and what does the priest talk about? So there's always that awkward part of it. But nevertheless, we have to lean in on this topic. I want to first address the question of why we're doing this, because we do this every year. And why do we do this preaching series? Well, so we can lean into the topic of why. Why do we give? What's the purpose of it? There's why we give. There's the question of how do we give? What are the scriptural principles that we as people of faith are called to follow? And if we know the why and we understand the how, then perhaps between ourselves and the Lord, we can figure out on the what. We also use this time to give our annual financial report to our parishioners. So next week, we'll be distributing it's a 12-page glossy handout. It's got all kinds of information and pictures and charts. We're going to be giving each of you or one of those to every household. Now, every priest I know doesn't like talking about the subject. We're all kind of terrified of it because one of the things is that we're kind of terrified for someone to say, you know, that father so-and-so, all he ever talks about is money. That's all he ever talks about. So we only do it 3 weeks a year. So that's 3 out of 52 weeks. That's not too bad, is it? Not too bad? Hello? You with me? Okay, so 3 weeks, 3 out of 52 weeks, that's what we're doing. And remember, too, that even though many of us may recall this message last year or the year before that, we always have new parishioners who haven't yet been blessed with hearing this wonderful message. And so there's that reason. And also, finally, I think we need to hear it ourselves. Because this message is also for me, because I, too, contribute in the collection. I give as well in this parish. And so I need to hear this message. We good to go? All right, let's get into this. I want to look at the first reading with you. It's from the Acts of the Apostles. It tells us about the return of Paul and Barnabas. Now, last week we heard about how St. Paul and Barnabas were sent off for their first mission trip. And they went to what is now modern-day Turkey and went from city to city preaching the gospel and setting up churches. This is around 47, 48 AD. This journey was over a year, probably a year and a half. And in the reading today, we hear that they're basically backtracking and going back to where they started, back to the town of Antioch, from where they were missioned. And there are two insights or principles that I want to draw from this reading this morning. Number one is the primacy of mission, and secondly is the ownership of the mission. Primacy of mission and ownership of the mission. Let's look at the first of these. The church is a missionary church. This means that we are a sent church. Mission is our primary reason for existing. This is true of the global church. It's also true of every particular church, of every institution in the church, of every religious community in the church. We just welcomed 3 new missionaries. I mean, you guys didn't say, hey, I want to go to Nova Scotia, did you? You were sent. They had no say. They were sent to come and be missionaries here. But it's the whole church that's sent, not just religious or priests, but it's the very nature of the church. In fact, it's not so much that the church has a mission as it is that the mission of Jesus as a church. The church doesn't have a mission, the church is a mission. You see the difference? So when it comes to the topic of giving, the mission is front and center. Fundamentally, we give to support the mission, not to pay the bills. It's not about the parish's need to receive, however real that may be, but it's about our need to give according to our identity as followers of Jesus and according to the calling that God has placed on our lives. Think about the paying the bills mentality. When it's about paying the bills, it's kind of like, well, you know, what's the lowest amount we can get away with to make sure that the lights stay on and the roof doesn't collapse? And we'll cover that. That's paying the bills. But when we look at giving through the lens of mission, it's open-ended. Jesus said, go and make disciples of all the nations. We've got a big mission field. And we're called to make an impact. We're called to be faithful and fruitful in this mission field. Now, we've come a long way over the last 5 years as we've sought to engage our mission as a parish in a new way. There's a lot of good news. It hasn't been easy, but I'd like to share some statistics with you, or at least a graph. Now, this table is from the report that we're going to give you next week, and it shows the average mass attendance per month over the last 3 years. And the interesting thing is that over 3 years, our average Sunday mass attendance has almost doubled. Almost doubled. We have now passed the number of people who went to Mass in the 4 separate parishes before the pandemic, before the merger in 2019. We have the numbers from 2019. You may say, well, how do you know this? Well, we actually count Mass attendance every single Mass, every single week. We've been doing it for 5 years. People say, well, why do you do that? Well, I like to say that we count people because people count. Now, this tells a story. It doesn't tell the story, the whole story, but it's a part of the story. And it tells us something. It tells us that at least in one dimension, a very concrete dimension of our parish life, we've stopped moving in the wrong direction and we've started moving in the right direction. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm happier to be moving in the right direction than in the wrong direction. But growing our Sunday morning numbers is not enough. We need to be a church that goes wide and deep. Sunday attendance, in a sense, is about width. It doesn't tell us anything about how deep we're going as a parish. We need to go deep as well as wide. We need to invite and help all of our parishioners go deeper in their commitment to following Jesus. This is our mission as well. To go deep so that our parish overflows from being about Sunday Eucharist, overflows from the Eucharist to impact our community through the ministry and service of our members, so that people are growing spiritually, discovering their gifts, experiencing themselves being used by God, so that we can also grow the community of our parish through initiatives such as small groups that we're trying to get going, when we have alpha in small groups, so that we can grow in love for one another. Remember the gospel today. Jesus said this, "Just as I have loved you, you also should love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you have love for one another." Everyone will know you are my disciples if you have love for one another. It doesn't say everyone will know you are my disciples if they see you going to church on Sunday morning. No. We're called to worship God. It's one of the commandments. We worship God on the Lord's Day. Everyone will know you are my disciples by the love that you have for one another. And the question is, how can we really love one another when we don't even know one another, when we're very much strangers to one another? And that's why we have the prayer partner thing at the beginning of the Mass. We're trying to break that, trying to break it open. And so that's also about the mission of the church, to help us grow in community, to actually know and love one another. It's our mission not just to gather people into the church on Sundays, as central as that is, but to go deeper. Now, the second principle is ownership of the mission. We heard in our first reading today that when Paul and Barnabas arrived, it said they called the church together and related all that God had done with them and how they had opened a door of faith for the Gentiles. They called the church together. Now, we don't use the word church in that way, do we? We would probably say they called the parishioners together and had a meeting. They use the word church to mean the community, the people. All the people. The church is the people. And this is the primary understanding of the word church in the New Testament. Church does not mean a building. It doesn't mean the clergy, but all the people of God. And all the people of God they owned the mission of the church. Ownership of the mission was collective. And this is a critical issue for us as a church, as a parish. Because whose mission is it? And I think we can boil this down to one simple question. Are we owners or customers? I'd like you to stop right now and think about your relationship to your parish. If you're here visiting from another parish, think about your parish at home. What do you presume? What's your unconscious presumption? Your identity? Are you an owner or a customer? Do we come to church or come together as church? When we gather for Sunday Eucharist, do we come as hosts or guests? Now, some of you are here today as guests. Praise God. But for the rest of us, do we also think we're guests? Or are we hosts? Are we owners or customers? This question of identity is deeply connected to the topic of giving. Because think about this. Do we give to the church or give as the church? Because if we think I give to the church, well, who are you? Are you outside the church? As if we give to the Cancer Society? Are we owners or customers? This is a critical question for us as a parish as we contemplate our future. The vitality of the early church was rooted in the fact that all considered themselves to be the church, to be owners, not customers. And when we know that we are the church and that we have a mission, we will be on the path to becoming missionary disciples, a phrase that Pope Francis used a lot. If we simply see ourselves as customers, we will simply be consumers. We might be consumers of religion, but we're consumers consuming another product. shaped by our preferences of what we like or dislike, and being primarily concerned with our own convenience. Now, we all have preferences. There's nothing wrong with that. But followers of Jesus submit their preferences to the mission. Why? Because it's not about us. It's not about us. It's about the mission that Jesus has given us. A church of religious consumers will never own or live the mission that Jesus has given us and will bear little fruit. But owners own. Owners invest. Owners buy in. They don't just seek to pay the lowest price for their preferred level of convenience. They don't pay the bills. They fund the mission. So, we've looked at this question of why we give. And over the next 2 weeks, we're going to delve into the question of how. What are the biblical, scriptural principles that we've been given about how we are to give, not just at church, but in our whole lives? And hopefully by looking at the why and the how, we will be able to arrive at the what. And I leave you with this question today. And I ask you if you get any spare time during the week to pause and maybe give some thought to this. And it's the question of why. Why do you give? Forget about everyone else. Why do you give? Are you an owner or a consumer?